Two friends, Alan Dale and Jerry Carew, who grew up just a few streets apart in St. John's East End, have been separated by Canada's geography for 3 decades. They came together virtually during the pandemic to chat about like-minded interests. Alan lives in PEI and Jerry in Newfoundland. Thriving in remoteness has been a common theme for both of them during the pandemic. Gale Force Wins, the podcast is the result.
Well, welcome to another edition of Gale Force Wins, and what an exciting time it is. I'm back in St. John's, Newfoundland, and as I always say, how are you doing, Jerry? But I'm actually right next to Jerry in his house on the east end of St. John, so how you making out, Jerry?
Well, you know what? I always say I'm doing pretty good, but here we are. I'm actually sitting in my little studio. This is the place where we started Gale Force Wins. I'm usually sitting over there, and this background is probably familiar to some people, and I'm here by myself. Well, I'm not here by myself today. We got this man, and I'm really excited to talk to him. It is 7:09 a.m., so we don't usually torture our guests, but we're torturing you today. Everyone got these crazy busy schedules, so we said, well, how about 7 o'clock this morning? So here we are.
Here we are. We're all jumped up on coffee.
My family's asleep. You'll hear them getting up.
Not much longer after me starts talking.
That's right.
So listen, making lunches, making lunches for the kids.
So Jeff, why don't you go ahead and start off by introducing yourself?
Okay, Jeff LeDrew. Basically lived in St. John's now for the better part of most of my life. Came from central Newfoundland, and like I said, did university at here at Mon, and somehow got in the coffee business after spending plenty of years in the basically the tech sector. So
and university, you did engineering.
Yeah, I did electrical engineering, so that was all
perfect training for the coffee business,
for
right?
Coffee business, yeah. But you know what? That being said, like I said, it's a lot of things in business in general. It's just problem solving, right? And what engineering shows you is basically how to get your way out of anything pretty well.
Right.
Or that's the way I found it anyway.
Yeah.
I always had to get my way, get a better marker, get myself out of a situation. So that's pretty well the process to teach me.
Jeff, where in Newfoundland exactly?
So Grand Falls, Windsor is pretty well where I grew up. So
Yeah.
it's not really a small town, but mill town. And my father worked in a mill. My mother was a loan officer. So basically, humble beginnings. Not really, nothing really to tell you. No real business background. No,
Right.
But there was always a drive in me. Like I can remember trying to create, have little, inventions is my thing. Trying to create new concepts, ideas. And since I was, basically small, I pretty well always had different concepts that I would love to be able to do. Right. So when I went to work for the tech sector, and I was working out of my house here, actually for a company in California, I always said, I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't try something. Right. You can always make, you can make good money, and when you get into the rut of making great money, I mean, I was making an unbelievable amount of money because it was U.S. dollar to Canadian exchange, and but you getting that system was really tough to get out of, and like I said, to take the leap to start something. Now, luckily enough, things kind of blew up back in the day. It really tech sector crashed, and a lot of companies shed a lot of people. So that was when I tried to reformulate how am I going to get out of this particular situation.
So you knew that it was coming.
Yeah, basically all the hardware manufacturers consolidated, and then basically Motorola and a few other people just basically were left.
How many years were you working in the tech sector?
I guess I worked out. Went to work right out of school for Cable Atlantic here with Dean and.
I volunteered there. That's how I learned how to do video stuff.
We built the whole cable network here, and then I knew so much about it that these guys I was asking the manufacturer so many questions and solving their problems for them. They kind of picked me off, and I went to work for those guys as
How many years was that? Did you work with them?
Well, it was 4 years for that one. I went to work for the Koreans for about 4 years, and it was about 10 years, 10, 12 years in the tech sector. So.
Yeah.
And I still kind of hung around. Like I said, even starting the business jumping me, I only started as a hobby. And then I had staff pretty well doing a lot of it for me still while I did engineering consulting. So
So your hobby, you're doing. What are you doing as a hobby? Are you roasting?
Yeah, that was
you're
my
not
thing.
retail yet.
No. Yeah, at this point I was just I had basically. I mean, when you're working at your house, now it's the big difference. I mean, internet and everything else has come tremendously a long way. So hobbies are, easy to come by these days. But back in the day, I mean, I picked up that little home roaster and a bunch of espresso equipment out of Germany, and then just started home roasting, and literally sausage your hand a bit of coffee. So you only need a couple coffees a day. So I was making enough espresso probably daily just to feed my passion and feed the
habit.
The habit, yeah. You don't want to call it a habit, but
As we drink the wellness blend.
I wanna go back a bit there
Yeah.
and pick up on something you said, because
Yeah.
I find it fascinating, and you're not the only person to have said it to us, and that is that you wouldn't forgive yourself if
Yeah.
you didn't
Yeah.
start something. Explain that to us a little bit.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. And again, it goes right back to like, basically just little, whether as a kid they were gadgets or whatever, you know what I mean? It was just things that I always had, and I'd make a bank of ideas that I really want to do, right? So
Yeah.
even through the tech sector, anytime I kind of thought of anything, I just plug it into a phone or plug it into a little business plan, and even so when I worked for the cable company, I always try to identify a need or whatever, right? And that was another opportunity. I tried to start a tech idea. And at the time, you could buy these big handheld meters. And when I came out of the cable industry, these guys were paying $2,000-$3,000 a meter and only one guy had them in the field. Anyway, so I actually started with the guy from Korea, a small digital handheld meter, which was basically a cable modem with a couple $100 cable modem, and you can turn that into a meter for every tech, right? It probably, I still believe in it, but like I said, it was a tough nut because there's so many established manufacturers in that game.
Yeah.
And so that was how the start of it. Like
I
everything.
find that statement ironic, given that you went into the coffee.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Jeez. There are a lot of established people in the tech sector.
Yeah, I know. You know what you don't know, what you don't know. So
No.
I mean, probably when I got into the coffee business, I never really had any intent. I always wanted to make it, a national brand, and make it big. But I mean, you never know. You don't know what you don't know until you get in, right? You don't realize how stiff it is to get into the market and what the competitive advantages are of those guys,
Yeah.
right? So, but again, like I said, that was the same reason how I evolved in the coffee business. Is that once you get in, you see the problem. The problem is there's big established markets out there. And the first thing we did was, re-engineer the coffee roasting process to do heat recovery and to start to save carbon offset. So
yeah.
I started that basically in 2005, and that was just mainly a hobby. Again, Rotary, and started selling into like food for thought and a few cafes, and got into a few small retailers. But as we grew out of that, Stephen Harper was on about carbon tax, and which is inevitably came to be. But at the time, I was like, man, I got to upgrade, so I might as well figure this thing out as an engineer and do some carbon offsets. And originally, my plan was to do enough carbon offsets so I could resell the carbon offset to the retailer, or not resell them, or just give them to them as credits and basically get me listings and use it as an advantage, because everybody asks you, like, I don't need another coffee. What do you what's your difference?
Right.
So we were able to save a pound of carbon for a pound of coffee. So that was the whole concept. That was my niche into the national game, and that was the whole point of starting in the first place, was make a fair trade organic, low carbon footprint coffee, right?
So you went through it quick.
I know. There you go. It's over. Listen, okay, wrap it up. I gotta go.
That's not easy for people.
7:05, 7:16. We're done.
That's not easy for people to understand.
Yeah.
So explain to us exactly
Yeah.
how you save carbon from the.
Right. So basically, the coffee roaster is like a giant furnace, right? So basically, like almost like your wood stove, right?
Yeah.
So, but you use some propane. You can actually roast coffee with wood and all that too. But anyway, so you're firing energy into there's several different ways. Into original first way we used to do it is a drum, and you'd heat the bottom of the drum would rotate around. Basically, it takes about 12-15 minutes, and then that batch is pretty well developed, and you follow a roasting curve and develops the coffee, right? But what normally you do is there's so much smoke. What people don't realize is just an insane amount of smoke created from a coffee roasting process. Right. And if you don't do something with that smoke, you end up with, unless you're in an odd country that allows it, I mean, you just get complaints and
Really?
even just the EPA and California is crazy about it. And anyway, so there's just a lot of issues around it. So most people take a giant, like a stainless steel container, and then heat that up to 1,000 degrees, almost like an afterburner for a crematorium, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So same deal. So basically, when you're burning this stuff, you got to basically burn off the smoke. So you got to increase the energy used again, double up the energy,
Right.
and burn off all that smoke. And then that's what increases, actually, tremendously increases your carbon footprint. It's the
Right.
amount of energy you got to do just to clean up what you're doing.
Okay.
So what we've done is pretty well taken all that and just started to recirculate that through the roasting process, right? And then at the end, we're able to control it with actuators and flaps and all the like, and then at the end, just exhaust the last bit of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a
So
bit
you're
of
putting your
time.
engineering back.
Yeah,
on
well, yeah. I mean, it
Like I was going to
yeah.
say, I mean, this is
Yeah.
unbelievable, the
Yeah.
connection between engineering
Yeah.
and this.
Yeah, and it's so tough. Like, I mean, it's hard. My biggest issue is that not a biggest issue, but it is hard to communicate this on a national scale, so people identify with it.
Right.
Basically take it as part of their own, and then specifically buy products that are not only just fair trade organic, that do all the great things there with no forced labor, no child labor, and it's environmentally friendly, right? So it's a tough message. It's not a tough message to sell. It's just a tough message to communicate
100%,
nationally, right?
Yeah.
Like Newfoundland, probably easy enough, and we haven't even really promoted it as much as we could here.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. It's not easy to get that.
So that's your
That's the
value
concept.
proposition.
Yep.
That's it right there.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, you know what? You got it written there? I'll be honest with you.
You never read it?
Never
Oh, I
read
guarantee it. I know. Back of the
Never.
bag. No one reads the back of the bag. So you know what I mean.
But that's impressive stuff. I mean, that's a very interesting
Oh, yeah.
thing to do,
Yep.
and a good thing to do, right?
Yeah, and then, but like I said, when you're getting on a national scale, you're not in front of the buyers half the time anyway, right? You still got sales reps that are out there, or brokers
Right.
and stuff. They don't have the same passion for the product, so you try to jump on as many calls as you can in order to get them to buy in.
Yeah.
and even some of the retailers, I mean, to just it's just
Yeah.
a bit of water off the duck's back a bit sometimes.
They don't care.
And, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they, you get the right person to tell the right story isn't easy. Once I get on the phone, it's not a problem. Usually
Right.
we can get interest, right? But
Yeah.
this is tough. It's hard to get those, people, they're busy. They give you like 15 minutes to
Right.
roll your pitch is worse.
Now, you tapped into something there again. I want to go into it and say your passion, right?
Yeah.
You're clearly passionate about it. Tell me about, go back a few years when you just start roasting
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Yeah.
What was it about the roasting process? Was it just that you were really passionate about coffee? Because I know,
Yeah,
for me,
yeah. You're-
my life revolves. If I
Around
don't have coffee
yeah.
in the morning,
Yeah.
I'm kind of done. I'm one of those guys, Jeff, that when I check into a hotel, I'm looking around the street to figure out where the coffee shop is, right?
Exactly.
So I get it.
Yeah.
So tell me about your passion for
Yeah.
coffee back then.
So you know what I mean. You get into the as you go through life. Obviously, you go through the whole wine phase, beer phase. I mean, now big thing with beers and coffee's the same thing, and each coffee has its own attributes and stuff. So at the time, I was just roasting espresso. So that was my jam. Was just basically making good espresso.
Yeah.
So I focused on trying to create a really good blend in that world. So a lot of research and stuff, and it's a lot easier now than it ever was, right?
Right.
But even it doesn't seem that long ago, but it is that long ago, and it was not as easy to source stuff. I mean, it was crazy trying to source even green beans and get them in.
Beans,
So
yeah.
I was, we were on trips, and I was arranging times to go meet random people to get, to get
Yeah,
coffee
right,
and stuff.
yeah.
It's not like order by mail these days, right? But
Yeah.
it was just like I'd meet up with somebody in Ontario and grab coffee or get stuff shipped in, and then try to blend it, right? So anyway, it was a time trying to figure, just even source, getting this amount of coffee is insane, right? You
Right.
can't back it, now it's probably not so much, but
Yeah.
just getting small enough amount, you just can't get it. It comes
Right.
69 kilo bags, right?
Yeah.
You're talking
Yeah.
150 pound sacks.
Yeah.
So that was, just trying to source a little bit of coffee for a consumer was
Right.
practically impossible, right?
Right.
Now there is a market there too, and there is a company that's trying to, that online really tore it up in that space.
Right.
And there is something to be said about, that space of teaching Amanda Fish kind of thing too.
Is that the green beanery? Is that
yeah,
the one?
Yeah, the Green Beanery, yeah.
You can tell I'm into
Oh,
this,
yeah,
right?
you know what you're doing. Yeah, so they did a really good job. Now I could have done that, but it's just even the mechanics of doing online. It wasn't. I mean, it's just not a simple process, right? It
Yeah.
looks easy.
Right.
Shopify and everything exists now and stuff, and even setting all that stuff up and still having to deliver on all your products, it's just not. It's not an easy proposition sometimes,
So you didn't go e-commerce in any way yet?
No, not back then. No, like I said,
Now, or you
yeah, we got
e-commerce?
everything's pretty all geared up now. But again, like I said, for us, it was you're selling into retailers, and you're not trying to have channel conflict too, right? So you're trying to establish a market, and back then it's still the onslaught of online ordering and the sort of the clear red line of here's retail and here's online.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As you came through the traditional retail, you're kind of to be back in selling to your same product to the same customers it wasn't really a great deal, and it was hard for us to even just process the orders and get everything done rapidly. So we just started selling into the Amazons of the world versus even trying to sell online retail ourselves. So
Right.
why try to repeat the wheel? Now what we do in online now is pretty well take those products that you can't get anywhere else and put them in, basically take single origins and take the naturals and all the odds and sods that you'd never be able to get retail, right? The problem is retail, you can only list, for one product across the country, you're talking $25,000 a SKU. just to get one little slot in the cross country, and let's assume it sells. And you only get that only lasts for a year, and then you get the boot if it doesn't sell with one retailer, right? So what people don't realize is that the grocery stores are in the real estate business, not so much the grocery business a lot of times, and that's not really true. But you know what I mean? There are fees to get stuff. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of money for them to list products and stuff too. So there is a lot of back end work that they need to do. But it is an extremely big investment to put it across the country.
Yeah.
And then to try to tell your story at the same time in a category that is dominated by Tim's and Starbucks. And that, again, when I came through now, it's getting easier for people to create brands and just, make up a little fancy brand and put it out there. But, just to get past, then we had the onslaught of McDonald's and Kraft and everybody coming with the McCafe.
Yeah.
And so Kraft was running McCafe's business. And then they basically just, tore a new strip off the retail. And even Tim's come in and they block out, when you see that Tim Hortons planogram, right?
Right.
They dropped $2 million to put that in, Sobeys or Loblaws and banner it out and lock in that section, right?
Yeah.
So it's just the amount of money and the hurdles, just they stack up, right? But it's extremely hard. Like you can see people doing craft, but to get from craft to grocery and to get from grocery to national grocery is just stratospheric.
But you're there though, right?
We're getting there, yeah. I feel like we
space,
are. We're trying
you?
to play. We're a guy, left in the sand over there. Not many friends, but
I can tell you,
Yeah.
what you just described there, I know that MUN runs a great engineering program, particularly the electrical side.
Yeah.
They didn't teach you that kind of stuff.
No,
Now,
no, teach you
what?
that, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
How did you...
You work your way through stuff, right? Like, it's just hurdles. You just knock them down. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know anything about GS1 and UPC listings, and then you had, all the certifications. And basically, there's now, like I said, how do you transfer the money, transfer the orders. There's EDI. Basically, they transfer everything has to be done electronically in order to get your orders. Yeah. And then now we got a bit more sophisticated. We've solved those hurdles. Well, it's a full-time job for our CFO just to manage the receivables and the like, and just be able to pick up the deductions. It's just insane. I mean, when you see air miles, it's just not simple as just, from you it is. You're just like, hey, I got 9 air miles. But like in the store, they draw those air miles. So all those deductions come off your invoice and the all that against, 7 customers. Take one doing flyer, one doing air miles, one doing this, that, you know what I mean? You're doing price drops and all that got to be, booked in. So we were the struggle to get past that next scale, and even just distribution. So we started selling the Sobeys. Walmart wanted it in 4 days, right? And we had one comment, and the guy's like, "Well, you got to get it to our DC, which is a distribution center, in 4 days." I said, "Well, we're in Newfoundland, man. You can't get it out of Newfoundland and get it to somewhere in Ontario in 4 days." Like, well, why are you doing business in Newfoundland? We almost, our tongue, our child was sitting on the floor, like. He basically just called us out, right? You know what I mean? Like, how are you supposed to answer that? Good point. Why are we doing business in Newfoundland, right? Yeah. And, we obviously ship product in from, Port of Montreal, brought in, right? Containers. And it all gets distributed through Canada through, sort of national green warehouses. Ship it down here to ship it back. So, we got to have a good proposition and a good product just to beat that.
Yeah.
Now, we've done some stuff with distribution now to solve some of that problem, right? So, now we've got a distribution warehouse ourselves as well as a partner that does all the national grocery. So the boys are in the game. Like, they're the number one distributor. Well, not number one, but they're up there. They do post cereals and, when you see all those other type of things hitting the channel, they manage the customer. Now, the only issue is that we cash flow gapped it now, right? So we've got those guys get paid. They pay us in 75 days. We pay our vendors in 30 days. And so what we're going through right now is figuring out how to scale to, we're probably a $4 or $5 million business. How do you scale to $10 million? How do you scale to a $10 million business and cover 60 days, even just cover 45 days?
It's a big blow on cash flow.
Yeah. So that's my trick this week is cash flow week.
So what do you do? Do you like go in a private room at home and just kind of meditate on this, or what do you do? Like,
I've got like a bank of applications, and once you've been in that it so long, I mean, most of the applications are pretty straightforward, right? So it's not like it doesn't take me any time to do it. And you get great relationships, right? So if you're stuck to your word, you pay people back on the regular, and they come back again. It's usually not a problem, right? So it's and that's the bonus of doing business here in Newfoundland. You'd never be able to pull this off in Ontario. No one would back you. There's just no way.
Yeah.
And I'll say that every day that COA, if it wasn't for a COA, Atlantic Canada would be busted. Like I said, it is the backbone of new business.
They help you out, yeah.
We hear that often, I mean,
No.
in the past you've heard a lot of people criticize the COAs of the world.
God,
And you know what?
No way.
I'm seeing a lot of good stuff. Alan, you are too.
No, so it's 100% right. I mean, I've always believed that there's government, academia, and industry have to work collaboratively together, right? And I find that, particularly in Atlantic Canada, a COA is often like the kindling to get the fire going, right?
Yeah.
100%. And then they have, in certain sectors, they have a great ability to just back away and let it take off, right?
Yeah.
And they ignite that fire and away it goes. So yeah, they've done a lot of good things for sure. Jeff, how big is your team now?
So you'd be surprised. We don't do this on a big team, right?
Yeah.
So most people are. We've got myself, basically a controller. We've got a marketing person, and we've got VP of sales. We got a roaster. So it's basically 9 people. And we do like $4 million. Now we got cafes, which are like, then you blow up your number. We're like 30, 40 people, right? So I mean, it's a big number when you add in all the retail.
Yeah.
But if you just think about the wholesale side of the business, we're doing that on 9 people, which is like $3-4 million. You know what I mean? Just on knocking it out.
That's amazing. And I'll say this to you: like I see the Jump Bean brand everywhere.
I see it everywhere.
You were at the airport. I don't know if you're still there now. Given COVID, probably wasn't.
No, maybe.
But I've seen.
I don't know where I am. People go, it's over there. I'm like, no, I did not know.
So you got some people working on that for you.
Yeah, well, some stuff. I mean, you do sales. I mean, once you get out of it too. I mean, the day-to-day side of the business, they do sales if they can get them, knock them out, right? I'm usually, back in the day, I'd literally load up the back of my truck and drop it everywhere. Now it's like, things happen without you kind of even knowing it, right? There's a guy from the Yukon that bought some, and someone's up in Dawson City and had it in their room, and you know what I mean. So
you know what? That's interesting for the budding entrepreneurs, and then we know we got a lot that are watching this podcast. To hear you talk so nonchalantly about letting go and letting other people do the thing, you can't do it all yourself, can you?
No. I mean, it's hard to do, and I mean, people make mistakes. It's never going to be perfect, but I'm just, I can't do it, man. Like I said, there's just too much on the go.
Right.
I mean, I'll lend a hand anywhere I can and knock it out, but it's after a while. I mean, you'll just bury yourself in the mud.
So you seem to know when to get out of the way, do you?
Yeah, well, that's a lot of the time.
If your staff watching this and say, we should get out of the way more, maybe something.
And our biggest struggle now, I mean, we have equipment failures, right? So, like, we've been going through a little issue for like last 6 to 8 weeks with a piece of equipment. Yeah. And it's just been a dog, right? I had to fly a guy in for a couple of days, and it's just, it's been a time just to get stuff right, and we're in a really wanky situation whereby the roaster's clogging up, and is to do with either the coffee or the airflow, and it's just nobody around to help me, right? So you kind of just got to get yourself out of these situations, and it is tough. It is a tough nugget here. And
so that machine goes down,
your toast is done. Like, she's done.
Now, are you roast right in St. John's?
Oh yeah, here in Mount Pearl, yeah.
Right in Mount Pearl.
Yeah, so you'd blow your mind just to see it, right?
So that plays on your mind.
Hudson and Rex coming next week to film the episode. So
cool!
You probably see it if you don't get a chance to. You can watch the Hudson and Rex too.
So how big is your roaster now?
So we do basically 150 pounds in 7 minutes. So it's just the scale of small guys in any little city you go to. Boys are roasting maybe 5 pounds to 20 pounds in 20 minutes.
Right.
So just put that in perspective for you, right? So
yeah.
Just scale. A lot of people can do it in a small little town. And that's the bonus of having these little brands or whatever that pop up and market brands, and you know what I mean? But to get to the scale we're at, like, we got 3 audits that happen within the month, right? We got an organic audit, takes a full day. Yeah. It's a fair trade audit, another full day. And then we got a pop-up audit that happens by Costco, which is basically it's a GF. Anyway, it's a global food basically inspection audit that needs to be done specifically for one client, right? Anyway, it's a challenge, like I said, and just getting through those. I mean, the back end is just tremendous amounts of detail.
I mean, I don't
know if you're like me. I'm sitting here like, whoa, this is a lot.
There's a lot going on. Tell me this now. I mean, how hard is it to get on the shelves of Costco? For a coffee?
It's not so bad. Like, it happened a couple times. Like, we were in, and then there's a guy specifically that came down. He was Atlantic regional VP for Costco. He pretty well pushed to have Atlantic companies in on the shelves. Like, they do want to support local companies, right?
Right.
Good.
But so we got the coffee and no problem or whatever.
Does the guy have to taste test it? How does that work?
I don't know how he got around it, but I don't know. Like I said, they definitely have their product selections are ridiculous, right? Like, anything you buy is pretty well number one, right? So anyway, so you better be good, and otherwise you're not in, right? But anyway, the national the coffee category is a little different.
Yeah.
Again, you pick the only category that's a little different, right? So K-Cup. So I never got into the K-Cup game for it was a good 3-4 years before K-Cups were on the go, maybe longer. I should say, look, it's like taking a renewable resource and making it into a non-renewable resource. And I'd say like banana. It's like basically taking a peel off banana, wrapping it in plastic because you're too lazy to, struggling with banana, right? So that's what K-Cups were, and the plastics and all that stuff. So I never got into that space until I could do a compostable K-Cup, right?
Right.
So that was fun and dandy. We got in there. Now to get that into Costco, that particular category is locked in. Like there's no, they doing global purchasing, and for us to get in there, we pretty well need a note from, super high up just to even get one slot. So expand that business is really
Right.
tough in that business. But
Yeah.
we've gotten some success in some of those traditional retailers, and then, I mean, obviously Amazon, like they don't do listing fees and stuff, so it's. We were just knocking that thing out of the park. Like that's just endless amounts of growth, right? So
Wow.
it's just, but you can list whatever you pretty well. We got a way, you can list, new products easier than you can get into the channel on traditional retail, right? Traditional retail to get it to the channel is it's listing fees, and it's just a lot of work.
Jeff,
Right?
do you sit back sometimes and say to yourself, Jesus, like 2005, I think you said you
Yeah,
started.
that was
And here you are now, you're on the shelves of Costco.
Yeah.
Like, do you scratch your head and say, holy shit, how did we
You
do
know what? I
this?
was thinking about what I was going to say to you guys. I was like, man, I feel like I've done nothing right. I still feel like I've accomplished nothing. That's the hard thing for me. Like I feel like I've accomplished absolutely nothing. That was so weird.
Like, I understand that
Yeah.
sentiment, but at the same time, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's why we wanted you on this.
Yeah.
We know you've accomplished a lot of
Yeah.
shit, right?
Yeah.
There's
Oh
a
my
lot
God, it's
happening.
unbelievable.
You got brands, you got retail,
Yeah.
you're all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
I haven't even scratched the surface. Like we do, we tried to do a co-pack on a RTD, which is ready to drink oat milk nitro cold brew, and we've done that where you've got instant going on. We've got a full line of flavors coming down the pipe, and we launched a lot of teas, and basically there's a lot to go, but it's to get those things retail is so tough, right? And that's about the Coleman's and everybody, great retailers locally, to be able to get that stuff out and to trial it in market. But the scale, it's just figuring out how to scale and doing it out of Newfoundland. You just don't have the relationships too. I mean, a lot of this, what you don't realize, being locked in here in COVID, you used to be able to travel, meet a few people at a trade show, get some interest in your brand, and move it a little bit further along, right? So we've been stuck kind of moving along, you know what I mean? Now we do have good brokers and stuff,
Yeah.
but still nothing like a face-to-face or even just networking to really
You're
get
right.
your out
It's
there,
funny
right?
because Alan and I were in Halifax together last week, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I used to travel once a week on a plane.
Yeah,
I felt I was there, like,
Yeah.
okay, where do my bags go? And like the process just
Yeah.
seemed really different to me, you know.
Oh, listen, 100%, but it is good to do business out of Newfoundland, notwithstanding the challenges. This is a
No,
solid.
there's no doubt.
This is a solid foundation to do business from.
Yeah.
I guess so. I want to pick up on something there. I've been to a lot of trade shows
Mm.
in my life, and most of them have been defense trade
Oh,
shows
yeah,
or marine
yeah,
trade
yeah.
shows or advanced manufacturing.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I could survive a coffee trade show. I'd be hyped
Yeah,
up. Like,
yeah.
tell me about a coffee trade.
Well, you know what? The funny thing is, so I don't do many of the coffee trade shows only because they're so niche, right? It's
Yeah.
all like, basically, if you're into a hobby, it's like the super hobby people, right?
Right.
So I usually hit the food trade shows, right?
Right.
So the best one though I've ever been to is the New York Fancy Food Show, which is just, football fields. Like there's a football field size of all Italy. And like it's just ridiculous,
Is
right?
that right?
Cheese and chocolate. Oh my God, it is ridiculous. Like if you ever get a chance, even as a spectator, to go to the New
Right.
York Fancy Food Show, oh my God, it is off the hook. Olives and cheese, new foods. Like I mean, it's just, and those are ones where the big retailers go. So we were trying to do business in the U.S., which we did get in. So we got into Sam's Club. And we started selling into Sam's Club.
Wow.
And we knocked out a lot of coffee through the Sam's Club, but they wanted just more money to wrap shipping around, and just at some point we just said, "This enough's enough, man. We can't do it, right? Like
Right.
you cannot take this freight on us. So it was like this specific margin, we just can't make it, right?
Right.
And without a good distribution system in the U.S., it was, and we had it set up, but we were just getting nickel and dimed to death, and then
Yeah.
basically you're wrapping dollar bills around, and so it's no
Jeff,
point, right?
Alan, it's really interesting to listen to that. Like, you're excited,
Yeah.
you land Sam's Club,
Yeah.
and then you got to make the decision
Yeah,
to pull
it's enough
out.
of that. We're like, nah, no, we're not doing this no more.
That's
You
a
never
tough
believe
decision.
it.
Yeah, there's a tough decision. I mean, there must be times when you land a big
Big,
a big contract.
Oh, they
you say-
beat you up. No,
What?
They beat you up.
And they beat, and you're thinking, how am I going to do this? I like your expression.
Yeah.
You're wrapping it in dollar
Oh,
bills.
yeah.
None of those big guys watch this
Yeah.
podcast. You can say whatever you want.
So good. No, like I said, all the customers are normally good, but they're after their bottom line. I mean, they
Yeah.
got their own strategic initiatives, right?
100%, yeah.
And the only issue is the buyers don't see the larger picture, right? So like any good salesperson, you're selling down your channel that you're selling through with all the buyer channel, and you're trying to sell across the system, which is sustainability. People that got bigger view of the world, right? Canadian. Because you got a company like Canadian Tire. I'll do a call out on Canadian Tire. They carry no local product, no Canadian product. Everything's all multinational K cups, all listed there. I'm like, boys, I carry it's Canadian Tire. Like, bang out a couple of Canadian companies, right?
Yeah.
So you got consolidation happening in the market. So you got Craftbot, Ethical Bean, Lavazza bought Kicking Horse. So if you look at the Canadian market, and this is something I try to tell people, like people just pick stuff off the shelf, right? But Tim's, basically big multinational Brazilian company. You see a franchise, and we'll get into it a little bit. So you see these, it's basically just a unit, but all their profits are going back to develop new markets or develop, existing markets that they got somewhere else. Same with McDonald's, and you got Kraft that basically got 4 or 5 brands that they own most of the market share for, and Nabob and the like, right? And you got, a few of these companies, but they're really all multinationals. The small guys, which was Kicking Horse, so we weren't small, but they were Canadian, truly Canadian. They got knocked off. Lavazza bought them. Ethical Bean, small company, mid-sized company, got bought out by Kraft, right? So if you look at mid-sized companies like mine, I'm probably one of the few that are scaled enough to get to grocery retail, but are not multinationally owned, right?
Yeah.
So, that's the trick is that people don't even realize what they're buying or where it's going, right? And it's not so matter, of the brand, like the brand and smoke and mirrors. It's just that where is it, what are you doing 100%. Next? And for us, it's like the jobs are in product development. So we're doing instant coffee, right? We're doing a fair, premium instant. And, trying to do, just to build our manufacturing core here. And there's nobody around, like even manufacturing gear, like nobody knows how to fix anything, right? Just between me and Country Ribbon and, a few people that actually have physical packaging machines, right?
Right. Yeah.
But like we got a bagger that does like 40 bags a minute or 100 bags a minute or whatever. But to get someone to fix that thing, like again, engineering. That's the only reason. Like if I can't solve it, I mean, flying someone in is not an option. Like we drop $10,000 bills every other week. We had to fly someone in for a problem, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm thinking about as you're talking. I'm thinking if you were on Shark Tank, what would Kevin O'Leary say to you?
So we've done this a dozen times. So not Shark Tank, but the Canadian Dragons thing.
Yeah.
So I've done the pre-interview for that
Have you?
4 times.
Yeah.
But see, they bought into coffee companies. So
okay.
Elaine, what's her face? She owns. She's got a pair of Balzacs, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So she owns 4 or 5 brands now. If you go on her site,
Right.
so she was a shark or an angel investor, whatever you want to call it. So she's got a ton of food brands.
Right.
And she owns Balzacs out of Toronto, so another mid-tier company in Toronto. Yeah, and that's kind of actually I used to deal with Balzacs when I first started. That was like one of the inspirations kind of thing. Also, influence anyway into my business. And that family got invested in and bought out pretty well. So now they're still Canadian. So I mean, it's still all good there, but it's tough. Yeah, like I said, they're small.
We covered a lot of ground here, man.
There's a lot going.
So, family, how are you juggling all this?
I got 4 kids, by the way. So I really only, like I said, to be honest with you, I mean, I work by getting the kids out by 9, and I'm home by 2:30. So but I work all hours of the day. I mean, it's not like I just pack it in. I mean, it's just that a lot of phone calls are on the phone with kids screaming in the back or running and skating or dancing.
How old are the kids?
So 8, 11, 15, 16, you know what I mean? So it's a lot going on. So.
He's busy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And your wife's an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, so she owns, dance studio, and she's busier than I am because she's a one-man rock star, or one-woman rock star on her own, so, and trying to keep her own business going. In the
What's her business?
It's a dance school, so
is that
County
right?
Park School of Dance. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So, even I find I'm tied into that a lot more, even like the physical things that need to be done more so than even sometimes having to get stuff done in my own business. So.
Yeah. The conversations around business happen at home. I've been, doing this for 30 years on the video side, so you always have these conversations. Yeah. But you're trying to get the kids motivated a little bit as well,
I'm trying to get my son to start up a specialty food business anyway, like doing like a food group or a hobble. I was trying to get him on to go with that. But
Are the kids entrepreneurial?
I don't know yet. Like I said, they're still pretty young. I mean, my son he's pretty good. We got him kind of geared up. He's got the
bitten by that,
by the bug, I think.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. You know what I mean? I'm always buying and selling something too. So
what, Jeff, is
that's
funny.
Just me. I get off and buying and buying and selling.
Well, it's important that we influence the kids. Like I say to my boys, I said it's one thing to go to a job and make money.
Yeah.
It's another thing to make money yourself from ideas. You know, like this podcast, Alan and I
Build
actually are making a few dollars now.
Yeah.
That money, you look at it and say, man, I made that from scratch, right? So I'm trying to impress the boys with that, but I'm not sure if they're listening or not.
What do you mean by
I don't feel like we're making any money. Usually we call ourselves a non-profit because we've been at it for so long now. Like I said, it's just the margins. Like this year, we didn't do a price increase in 15 years, right? So like we didn't know how to pretty well.
Yeah.
You know, airing the dirty laundry stuff. Anyway, so we started pretty high in price point, but like I said, we not high enough to be honest with you. So if you look at like Kicking Horse, they were at $15, right? Where our retails were like $10.99, right? So they had like a huge marginal difference in between that. And when we tried to go back for a price increase to the big retailers, yeah, well, it is, you know, talk about a bad experience.
Right.
It's extremely tough to set yourself in at a different price point after you've been out in the market. So
Right.
I did that for a reason at the time. I was trying to be price competitive, and I never had brokers, never had distribution stuff lined into that price. And then after you get all that stuff, they all take pieces of your margin. And then with the commodity increase last year, or you know, last year with COVID, it's just, you know, the number just crunches your margin number.
Yeah.
Now you're like wrapping dollar bills again. You kind of you got to try to weather the storm and to get through a little period of crunch on your cogs, you know, cost of goods side, right? So it's been whacked.
Do you ever go right back to the farm where the beans come from?
Yeah, we've done a lot. Yeah, we've done several trips down to Costa Rica and you know, friendly countries. Actually, we went to El Salvador, which was a bit wild and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's pretty neat to see it all work, right? Wow. And you don't realize what coffee's all about. I mean, it's just until you get to the farm level. I mean, it's like the second biggest commodity in the world, and one of the most touched products by many hands, human hands, as you'd imagine, right? They have to pick all the cherries, number one, by hand. So there's people in the field, literally basket and strap, picking cherries, right? They go and pretty well unload them. Then they have to process all those cherries, so they put them in a water bath and pretty well soak them and take all the fruit and the skin off them. And then they're left, and they dry them on the patio stones, like on the street, like basically it's just patio stones with wooden rakes, and just walk along, you know, every day, just drying them out, and then you got to take all those green beans and reprocess them back into, you know, screen them, so they're screen sizes like from 13, 14 to bigger beans that are 17, 18, screen them all. You know, fancy screening machines that'll literally laser pick out every bean to the sizes.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, think about that every time you have a coffee.
Yeah, it's wild, and then that's even before it gets to us, right? So that's just getting it to us, and then we go through all our process to package it up and either just process it straight up, grind it, you know, flavor it, do whatever, right? So it's wild, yeah. Unbelievable.
You're right, Jerry. I mean, we take for granted. We go get a coffee, and we have no idea how many people have kind of been involved in that process.
Well, I think it's important, like in life, you know what? One thing I do every morning, when the hot water hits me in the shower, I thank God that I have hot water. And you know what? Now you're going to make me think every time I have a coffee, thank God I can actually have that.
Yeah, 100%. Jeff, fascinating journey, right? Going from, you know, a roaster at home, a little hobby, a guy who liked coffee, to building an incredible brand, actually, and a great Newfoundland story. I love it. It's a fantastic story. We often ask our guests to leave the podcast or the audience with one small piece of advice. You're a guy that doesn't seem to shy away from an adventure, an opportunity. What would that piece of advice be?
I don't know. I mean, for me, it was just getting started, right? Like the thing is that, and it should be. I'm not saying it should be any easier. It can be harder now than ever. I'm sure where there's so many people that get started, but just get after it, right? And then if you know. Basically, if you don't start, you'll never know. So, I mean, that was my goal. If I didn't start, I would have killed me just to work for the rest of my life, to be honest with you. You know, you had a great life and you would have made as an engineer, you could have just, you know, you would have a great salary and just, you know, good job and but
it's true, though. At the end of the day,
for me, it was really getting it done. You know what I mean? And it's still not done. For me, it's still, like I said, you know, it's not banked yet, right? Like for me, and I told you, the sense of did you get it done? I feel like it's still I haven't done it right. Like I know it's hard to see, but for me, I haven't done it right. Like until that's truly national, across the country, you know, and even international brand, like just not happy with it. It's hard to hear about.
You know, it's funny. You remind me of John Steele when he was talking to us, and he said, you know, they once they sold Newfoundland Capital for $500 million. That's when he felt kind of validation, and I'm thinking, holy shit! I mean, that's a company that's been on the go for 40 years. You've employed so many people. You're providing a lot to this economy, and for that, I mean, you're not going to kick up your feet and say,
No.
it's all done. But, you
Well,
know,
I'd go again. Like I said, if I can get this done, I'm
I'd
down.
go
Like I
again.
said, 2 seconds later, new business would be started. But I said I wouldn't do it again until
Yeah.
I finished this one, right? So
Right.
I definitely would go, like, if this was imparted or somebody came and took it and wanted it, then fine enough, but I'd start it again.
do you ever
2
say to
seconds
yourself,
later.
holy shit, what have I started? It's like a
Yeah.
treadmill. You got to
Can't
get
out of
going.
it. No, yeah, there's no getting out of it. So, I mean,
But to your point, get it started. Anyone
Yeah.
watching this and saying, get the
Yeah,
goddamn
it's gotta-
thing started.
yeah.
Alan says that
get
to
it
me.
after it, yeah.
What's your saying, Alan, about tuning the guitar? Just tell
so
us that.
I mean, I've been in bands, you know,
Oh, yeah,
for a long
yeah.
time, and you got, and in my opinion, you got two types of. It's going to piss a lot of people off. You got two types of musicians, right? Those that just always want to practice,
Yeah,
always
yeah,
practice and
yeah.
practice, and then you got the other kind of musician, normally the drummer,
Yeah.
who says, "Boys, let's just get the
Let's
gig.
just get her going."
Let's get the gig. We'll practice towards the gig." And that's so Jerry and I have employed that
Yeah.
same philosophy in our podcast, which
Yeah.
is. Let's just get the gig
Yeah, if you
and
don't
get
get
out there and get in the
Yeah.
conversation and
Yeah.
get moving. And that's a great piece of advice because I can tell you, Jeff, I mean, you might not think that you're inspiring anybody here today, but I can assure you are. There's people right now sitting in an engineering classroom and they wanna do this and they're saying, I don't know if I can do that. Just get out and give it a
Yeah.
try, right? Put your hat in the ring and see where it goes. I think that's great advice, Jerry.
I would have probably got started sooner. Like right at engineering, Genesis Center was just getting on the go.
Yeah.
And it was between, at the time, if I had a little bit of bank or a way to survive during
Yeah.
those periods, like probably a little bit easier to survive now, but I mean, I would have started. Best time would have been started when there was zero risk out of the university, right? So
Yeah.
you had nothing to lose. And then,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Now you bank it up
Yeah.
and you get everything structures you put these, these structures that limit you in your own mind, limit you like your family
mind,
and
yeah.
your, all these little structures that you got in your, in place that if you fail, then you're,
Yeah.
busted, right? But for me, I always said, like, no, let's go back to work, man. Someone's going to hire me for something. It's not like I can't get another job.
Well,
Oh, wow.
If you blow it
but
up, right?
it's an interesting point, limiting beliefs. I mean,
Yeah.
frankly, I used to call myself a semipreneur. I've been having this video production
Yeah.
company on the go since 1988, but I never took the leap,
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I can say this. Having a little sideline has served me
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
well. What I say to a lot of young people, like and Alan and I talk about this, the gig economy, having something on the go on the side that keeps you motivated. And if you're not spending all that money and you're banking it,
Yeah.
in 30 years' time, Jesus Christ, you say, I got a few dollars.
Yeah.
Right? So I think a lot more Newfoundlanders should have a little sideline gig.
Side gig,
Do
yeah.
what
Side
you
hustle.
did. Start a roasting thing.
Yeah.
Do something,
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, it's
I'm very
tons of
passionate
it.
about
Yeah,
this stuff,
yeah.
and I really appreciate you coming here today and telling our viewers, how you got started.
Yeah.
It's not that easy sometimes to talk about yourself, right?
Listen, another wonderful edition of Gale Force Winds. I mean, what a great conversation today for taking a passion of roasting beans in your house to an incredible company jumping bean on shelves all across the country and indeed the world. I mean, this is really inspirational. If you're a young entrepreneur out there, tune in, share this message around. I mean, just get out there, get the gig, get started. I think there's a real opportunity there. I mean, it's just really quite inspirational to hear you speak here today, Jeff. And I too like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice, and that is, quite frankly, man, the world needs more Jeff LeDrew. So thanks very much.
And jumping bean.
on that.
And jumping
And
bean.
jumping bean. Yeah.
All good.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds. That's Gale Force Winds, WINS.com.